ex-inmates taking charge and forming units and parties of different kinds, getting together, nationalities. They even got a concert party going for entertainment. We started a school for the children, because there was still quite a lot of children. And everybody was sort of waiting to see what's going to happen next. There were various suggestions, because this was happening not only in Belsen, but all over. There were many DP camps. These people, sorry, I didn't explain. These people came to be known as displaced persons, DPs. Belsen was by far the biggest, but all over Germany there were other smaller DP camps, again with the same problem. They refused to go anywhere. The question was for the Allied and the governments, what are we going to do with all these people? Various suggestions were put forward about emigrating to different countries, South America or America, and allocating and all that, but it didn't come to anywhere. Nobody would agree to take them. And eventually, after a month or so, the Jewish members, which most of them were, came to realize that their probably only hope they would have is to go to Palestine and establish a home there. Palestine at that time was under the British Army control, under an arrangement which was made at the end of the First World War of only allowing immigrants of, I think, 50 or 60,000 a year, or something of that kind, as agreed with the Arabs that were there. But what happened is that from Belsen and other places, and certainly from my place, every night parties of 20, 30, 40 would disappear, and to make this very perilous 2,000-kilometer journey to Palestine. Some going by sea in shaky boats, overloaded boat people, as they came to be known later. Some over land. Anyway, that was what many people did, the more adventurous of them, I suppose. And that was going on, and of course they eventually got to Palestine, and I won't go into the whole story of what happened there about the establishment of the State of Israel and so on. That's another story. But Belsen was one of the places where it all started, and where the exodus started, and where the whole problem started. From a military point of view, since the British Army were in charge of Palestine and trying to keep order and trying to keep the arrangements, I was instructed to prevent the people leaving Belsen to go there. Actually, I didn't know how I could prevent them, because there were no, it was an open camp and they could walk off if they wanted to. And in any case, I decided to turn a blind eye to the whole thing. I couldn't do much about it, and if they wanted to go, I thought, well, let them go. But of course, America, in the American zone, where because they weren't burdened with Palestine and the problems there, they had another policy. They actually helped and encouraged people to pass through the American zone of Germany and on their way to Palestine. So in the end, after about 3 months of being in charge there, incidentally, some of the press reported it as the Belsen holiday camp, of all things. But you know, because we did, I think, produce an amazing result in a short time with these people. Anyway, eventually, after 3 months, the camp was handed over to UNRWA, that's the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Authority, United Nations, and the camp was taken over by UNRWA, and I was through with it. But I wasn't quite through with it, because in September of '45, they'd started the war crimes trial in Lüneburg, which was a city, the nearest city to Belsen, actually, about 20, 30 miles away, the war crimes trial of the SS Guards. That was the first war crimes trial ever done. There wasn't any after the First World War, as far as I know. So it was under the United Nations war crimes. And this court was set up, mostly British officers, and there were 43 SS who'd been held in all this time after they'd done with the dead bodies in the nearby town of Celle by the military police. So they were on trial in Lüneburg, and the trial proceeded. It's all recorded, and there's much evidence given, and I was called to be a witness, primarily on the question of how, why all these people are allowed to starve to death and to be without water when it was so easily obtainable nearby, and there was quite a lot of evidence on that front, which I had to give. So that was the Lüneburg trial, and the result of that was that of the 43 people, SS guards, 10 were hung, including Kramer, the captain, and the other 33 had long prison sentences. And that actually was the end of my involvement with the Belsen camp. Some other points. At the time, there was quite a lot of criticism in the British press about whether the British Army did enough, or should have done more, could have done more, to help this humanitarian disaster. And why didn't we do more? Well, the thing was, as I've said several times, there was a war going on, and there's nobody in an army that's like kind of surplus anyway. Everybody's got a lot of work to do. And from a point of what to do, all the soldiers that were there were all young fellows, mostly in their teens or early 20s. They knew all about fighting with their artillery or tanks or whatever it is. But this situation was something completely out of anybody's knowledge, experience, thought, or a complete shock to the system. And none of us, of course, had any idea what to do. When faced with that situation, you know, what would you do? So I would say that I and all of us did the very best we could, and we worked long, hard hours to try and achieve that. I mean, just as an example, I told you about the army rations and the cookhouses and what. Having done that, and quite a lot of the prisoners actually sort of gorged themselves, you know, because they were starving. And it's true that hundreds died because they ate that rich, meaty food on having starved for weeks, and they died because we fed them. Now, you know, who would have thought of that? Who would have worked that out? You know, this is the sort of thing that happened. The Belsen at the time had absorbed so much of the Second Army's facilities in the way of transport, food for all these people, the medical supplies and the hospital, that General Montgomery, who was in charge of the British Army, was said to have contacted Eisenhower, of course, was the supreme commander of the Allied invasion, was said to have said, well, Eisenhower, either we're going to deal with Belsen camp or we're going to get on with the war, because we can't do both, you know? And it was that kind of a situation. Actually, of course, we did do both. Another thing that came out was that did the British authorities, or Churchill, know about the fact that there was this concentration camp and what was going on inside it, and the people were dying, and the suggestion was they did know, and they should have done something about it. They should have taken some action once they knew. There was quite a lot of allegation like that. And it could well be that there was some knowledge amongst the government and the army chiefs of this. Whether that's true or not, or what they knew or not, I don't know. But it is also said that it was considered what could be done.